Welcome back to iShine Connect.
One of the things that you said, Michael, that I've never thought of is when I think of Jesus taking that walk, the Via Dolorosa, I don't think this, like crowded with people.
Yeah, I think we always read the Bible imagining these big spaces. The Sea of Galilee is huge. The Mount of Beatitudes is huge, but it's really a very small geographic place. You have to remember these cities had a lot less people in them than there are cities today. So here's the fifth station. Simon picks up the cross. Jesus is so exhausted from carrying the cross on his own that he needs the help of this man who's here, leaves his family to walk with Jesus along the rest of the road.
When I see how far we've walked, he must have lost so much blood. Physically, he had to have been absolutely exhausted. I think sometimes we've become so accustomed to hearing the story that it's only when you actually walk in the footsteps of Jesus that you realize this was a moment where he was glorified, as opposed to we see it as a moment when he was tortured and abandoned. But Christ said this was the moment that he came for.
You can see we're ascending here, right? So imagine he's walking uphill, bearing the cross. Simon's helping him. And he goes to this place where he's crucified between two criminals. You know, they were trying to make this statement that here he is, they were mocking him, and they didn't realize even in the mocking of him, this was actually the moment where love was on display, where the justice of God and the mercy of God come together on the cross. This beautiful moment.
I read something that Calvin wrote in the 16th century where he said that in those days, the person who was crucified in the middle would be seen as the greater offender.
Yes.
That he would be the ringleader, that for those who were passing, going into Jerusalem for Passover, would think that Christ was the worst of them all, which in some ways, as he was about to drink every drop from the cup of the wrath of God, in some ways it was true. He was taking that all upon himself.
Powerful. When we read about this in the gospel accounts, it's so interesting because Matthew in particular mentions all of these things that happen along the way. Them mocking him, casting lots for his garments. And we see it's this parallel. If you read through Psalm 22, written by King David, this parallel, and you see that David was actually writing about the messianic prophecies. And how many times does Jesus say, no, this must happen so that the prophecies, the prophets would be fulfilled?
Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, when I read, like, in Isaiah the prophet, when he says, unto us a child is born. It's like he's writing in the moment, not like however many hundreds of years from now. He will be born, but unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they wanted. They wanted someone who'd come in and throw the Romans over and establish his kingdom. But it's not a kingdom of this world.
No, not at all. And even, you know, he's being the Son of God. He's being tried by Pontius Pilate, and he doesn't utter a word in response. When he's at Caiaphas's house being tried, when he's with Pontius Pilate, he doesn't utter a word other than say, this is who you said I am.
Yeah.
And we know the Apostle Peter writes later on, he continued to entrust his soul to the one who judges justly. Just that like a lamb before its shearers are silenced, the Lamb of God was also silent. He didn't have to defend himself. He didn't have to be defensive. His life wasn't taken from him. He laid his life down for the sins of the world.
We've passed so many people who appear to be on pilgrimage.
Yeah.
That is why they have come here. And there's different sections of the old city.
So it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Armenian.
Yeah, they all identify with story in this, but very different ways.
What I love about Jerusalem is that it's a city where everyone believes in God. They believe in one God.
Yeah.
But they debate what is the nature of that God like. So the Muslims see Allah as God, and the Jewish people see the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But with Christianity, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we see him expressed in his son, who lays down his life as a sacrifice for many. And it's this beautiful picture that we see of him being the second Adam, coming to redeem mankind, being that righteous man that so many of the Jewish people aspire to, someone who fulfills the law and the prophets.
This is a long walk.
It's a long walk. And now it's important to remember that this would have been where the walls of the city were at that time. So he would have been walking outside of the walls of the city, crucified outside the camp.
Wow.
Which is this, again, symbolic picture going all the way back to the Israelites in the wilderness, where they would send the sacrificial offering outside the camp.
Right, taking their sins away. It's so interesting. When I was growing up in Scotland, every Easter we sang this song, "There is a green hill far away outside the city wall."
Yeah.
And I didn't understand, because now they have different places where they say Christ was crucified. But have the walls changed in terms of where the wall once was and where the wall is now?
Yeah, so the walls have changed several times. So these would have been the second walls during Jesus' time in first century. And now the walls today are completely different. So today, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where we're going, they're now inside the city walls, but they would have been outside back then. They put him on a main street. That's typically where they crucified criminals. They put him on the main street because they wanted everyone to
Shame
see.
is greater.
Yeah, to see the shame, to see, hey, this is a warning of what will happen to you if you also act in a criminal fashion or come against the governing leaders.
You know, I'm reminded of Psalm 34, when David's in this terrible place, having done some things that were just outside of what God would have wanted and cost the lives of many. But then he writes, those who look to him will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will touch their faces. And when I contrast that with that understanding of cursed is he who's hung upon a tree, he literally took all of our curses upon himself.
Yeah.
So that we could be free.
Yeah, beautiful. And he says, when the Son of Man is lifted up, he'll draw all men to himself. And that's the beautiful thing. And so much of Jesus' ministry, he even, he doesn't work mostly with the Gentiles. He's working with the Jewish people.
Yeah.
But this moment of the crucifixion, we see this is the moment where the gospel goes from being good news for the Jewish people, the new covenant for the Jewish people, to being opened up to the nations and the Gentiles. That's what so many people that come here on pilgrimages now are coming to remember where Jesus walked and what he did in this moment, in this place.
Tell us where we are, because it feels like we're kind of above ground at the moment.
So here we are, the final kind of stop of the Via Dolorosa. We've come to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre behind us. You see these two blue domes. This is the place where we celebrate and honor the crucifixion and the burial and the resurrection of Jesus. So you can see there's so many tourists that are coming here. This is the end, final stop as they come before they enter the church and see Golgotha, Calvary, and also the place where the first century tomb was found.
So tell me what it was like. I mean, you came here when you were just 20 years old, just a boy. What was it like for you the first time you walked into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Yeah, I think you walk into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and just to paint the picture, you're walking into a church shared by dozens of different Orthodox faiths, really four main: Greek Orthodox, Catholic, Russian Orthodox, these different churches. And there's so much celebration. There's statues, there's images, people are kneeling and kissing, and there's incense, and you're smelling it, and it's very, very religious.
Yeah.
And actually, you kind of think this is kind of the thing Jesus came to come against the religious leaders.
Over the tables.
It reminds me of Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, when he's there with Moses and Elijah, and Peter says, hey, let's build an altar. One for you, one for Elijah, one for Moses. And Jesus says, no, no, no. He hears the voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved son, worship him. And I think that should be our response to something like this. We know that the place is not holy.
Yeah.
It's what he did here that's
Yeah.
holy. And now he's been ascended, and we can worship him and remember. And I think when people come here, it's the experience of what he's done for us and not the exact stone that's going to change our lives.
There's the places that everybody
Yes.
pays attention to and bow and kiss. But there's a different place you told me about that nobody pays attention to.
Yeah, so the actual site that they believe was the tomb of Jesus has now been enshrined, and there's long lines to get in.
Yeah.
It could take hours.
Yep.
Very busy, lots of people. But just behind there, in the original rock, there are first-century Jewish tombs. There's an empty tomb. This would have been a tomb like Joseph of Arimathea. This rich man hadn't been used before, hewn out into the rock, and it gives you a great picture of this is a place that looks like where they would have laid him.
But I think one of the most significant things you've said, though, Michael, and we're so grateful for you spending this time with us, is don't worship this, worship him.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing when I think about Calvary and when I think about the tomb, the empty tomb, it's seeing Jesus, his glory on display as the Messiah. They mocked him, they put a sign, say, "Hail the King of the Jews." But they didn't realize this was actually the moment when heaven and earth came together, where he plundered hell, he conquered death. And this is the God that we worship. And now what I love is all the pilgrims that come from around the world, it's an honor to the God here who said, go into all the world, to the ends of the earth. And now they've come back here to worship him.
And you and your wife are part of that, and we just pray God's richest blessing over the work that you do here. And thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you, it's an honor.
I love it, thank you.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm JP Crawford, shortstop with the Seattle Mariners.
JP Crawford flexes his muscles.
I love my experience competing in the pitch, hit, and run when I was a kid. It helped me believe in my skills as a player.
The 1-2 on the way to JP. And the Mariners win it!
Go show yourself what you're made of and make your way to the national finals at the World Series. Sign up for a free competition near you at pitchhitandrun.com.
A message from Major League Baseball.